Thanks for joining me today. My name is Karen Lai, and I'm the Vice President of Client Partnerships at BetterUp. We're really excited to be here. The theme of this year's symposium is building a future-ready workforce, and that's really at the heart of what we do at BetterUp. We're laser-focused on the intersection of work and human flourishing. Everyone in this room is focused on enabling people in their organizations to perform at higher levels. And on the other hand, we have the world of academia that has done decades and decades of research to answer the question, how do we enable people to live a more meaningful and engaged life? At BetterUp, we're really focused on understanding what happens at the intersection of those two fields of work. And we're not the only ones. There's growing interest in understanding how can we connect these two fields to bring out the best in every person. And we believe that is the future of work. To set context for why this is important for us to be studying right now, let's take a look at some of the work that one of our Science Board advisors, who's also the co-chairman of the Deloitte Center for the Edge, John Seeley Brown, he paints a really clear picture of why this is so crucial. As we're all living and breathing, we're in this time of continuous exponential change. And how this is so different from the past era, where we experienced high periods of change followed by long periods of stability. So think about that as disruption and then adaptation. What we're experiencing now is a rapid set of punctuated jumps. And if you think about in most industries, this kind of change is happening now every 18 to 24 months. So while you're adapting to that first set of changes, 18 to 24 months later, you're hit with the next wave of change. And what this feels like, how we characterize it at BetterUp, is leading in the whitewater world. You've got your team in this raft, you're heading down the white waters, you're navigating the currents, the waves are coming at you at all sides, and you have no moment to pause. You need to be fully engaged and navigating to understand which way the current is going to go next. And as you can imagine, as you're all living and breathing, it's really exhausting. In some industries, it already feels like this. In other industries, it may feel like you're an anxious float down the river heading towards the rapids that you know are coming on the other side. We know that people are working more than ever. Productivity is high. Yet, our friends at Gallup continue to show us that the majority of people are not engaged at work. One big question that we have at BetterUp is, are people not engaged only at work, or are they also not engaged at home? Our own study of thousands of American workers across different industries, job levels, socioeconomic status, show that the average American worker believes that work is only half as meaningful as it could be. And then shockingly, people shared that they were willing to give up 23% of their life earnings for work, in exchange for work that feels more meaningful. After giving this talk at other events, I've had people come up to me afterwards and share that, I had a high performer who left and took a 20% pay cut for a more meaningful job. And so these results are coming to life. And then there's the very unpopular study by Jeffrey Pfeffer at Stanford University. His study indicates that workplace stress is attributing to at least 120 deaths every year and accounts for $190 billion in healthcare costs that ultimately your companies are helping to pay for. What we can expect is that in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll continue to see massive change. There's countless studies out there. This one here is a projection from the UN Sustainability Agenda. And what shocks me is that 80% of US workers will be replaced or wage suppressed in the 2020s due to automation. So whichever study you're paying attention to, what we know is that change has never been this fast, and Moore's law tells us that it will never be this slow again. So the big question that we're all trying to answer, how do we build future-ready leaders? BetterUp is working with some of the most progressive companies across industries, and we'd like to share what we've observed from our earliest clients to the hundreds of clients that we're working with today. What we've observed is that these progressive companies are doing three things differently. First, they're focused on the unique human behaviors and mindsets. They don't tell us that technology or technical capabilities is getting in their way. It's the human behaviors that's getting in the way. Second, and we heard this in other sessions yesterday, that these progressive companies are anchoring their initiatives on strategic business imperatives to get the support and buy-in that they need to drive change forward. And then third, they're investing in lasting behavior change. The industry has been transforming over the last 2 decades, and we're going to see this continue as people are looking and researching to find what is truly driving lasting behavior change. So first, let's take a look at the uniquely human behaviors and mindsets. This is an evidence-based perspective on the future-ready leader. On the top half here, you'll see the outward behaviors and capabilities that we call the inspiring dimensions. More importantly, what underpins those behaviors is a set of mindsets, inner mindsets, that drive one's ability to change those outward behaviors. I'm going to focus here for the rest of the talk because the inner mindsets is what companies typically overlook and what is so crucial to driving behavior change in our people. Let's take Agile as an example, which is at the root of how people change and grow. Risk tolerance is responsible for so many of the challenges that we're facing. Something as simple as helping a new manager delegate without increasing their risk tolerance for failure and doing something different, letting go, they're really not going to be able to delegate despite all of the training that we throw at them. Resilience, growth mindset, I know those are top of mind for most companies these days, and those drive the ability for people to include others, to elevate and drive. At the bottom, middle, centered, think of this as fuel in the tank. This is what keeps people engaged. I'm going to talk a little bit more about purpose. This is what keeps people engaged, motivated, and the energy to sustain this whitewater world that we're in. And then the third one on the bottom, aware. We've heard a lot about how we need to be aware of how this inner machine that we have works so that we can take advantage of that space between stimulus and response to make the most informed choice that we have. And these inner resources, just to show how powerful they are, these are results that we see in our own clients and the correlation between different resources. When you increase calm, which is the inverse of stress, you enable someone's ability to really focus. And so if you think about people in times of change, when they're really stressed, it has the opposite effect. People cannot focus, and when they cannot focus, they're not performing. Risk tolerance has been shown to increase trust climate within the teams that leaders are building, and also resilience. Tapping into a sense of purpose is really the key to driving engagement. And then as many of you know, we're focused on your company's values. Think also about one's personal values, and when you can align those two, you're driving so much alignment and retention. And then finally, sense of control. This is defined as a belief that you can you can influence the outcome of what you're dealing with, that in itself can increase someone's ability to influence others and the outcomes of the organization. And then interestingly, it elevates a feeling of calm, because when you feel that you are in control and you can control outcomes, your level of stress decreases. So these inner resources really are powerful enablers of driving change forward. Purpose alone drives engagement, lowers intent to leave, and performance. So if you need evidence, this is based on our own study of meaning and purpose. If you need evidence of focusing on these inner resources, there's real business proof here that you can increase engagement by 51%, reduce intent to leave within 6 months by 41%, and increase performance by about 33% just by tapping into an individual sense of performance. Okay, let's talk about the strategic imperatives for change. The companies that we work with are identifying a must-do effort in the time frame of the next 12 to 18 months. So if you think about this horizon and timeline for change, change is coming every 18 to 24 months. They're defining this imperative in a way that really hypothesizes what's the significant consequence of not achieving it, and that enables them to garner a lot of executive support and urgency to move forward. So really simple framework here. We must do something in order to define, to impact the outcome or a goal. And then finally, or else we will, what's that consequence of not doing it? And what we're finding across all of our clients is that the strategic imperative comes in three major themes. The first is proactively preparing for disruption. The second is enabling an existing change, culture and strategy transformation. And the third are companies who have already been through that middle step of changing, and now they're trying to build the capacity for continuous change. I'll share a real example. I can't disclose the company, but it's a company in the financial services industry. And they really survived the first round of fintech disruption, and they emerged as an industry innovator. So that's something to celebrate. But they weren't satisfied. They said, we need to continue changing and growing. So their imperative is that they want to become as agile, they need to become as agile as a fast-growing tech company in order to continue creating market-leading innovations despite continued disruption. Or else, what will happen is that they'll lag behind fintech competitors and lose their market position. So this enabled them to really drive this initiative of driving the capacity for agility and change in the organization. And then finally, we get to lasting behavior change. How do we do this? The companies that we work with realize that personal transformation is a journey. It's not a once and done. The first step is learning. The second step is doing. We're all familiar with the concept of transferring learning on the job. And the aha moment for me personally is that that's not the end game. You have to sustain that doing cycle to get to a point of being where those behaviors and mindsets have been inculcated. And how to do this requires so many steps. So on the learning side, there's gauging readiness, there's personalization and contextualization, knowledge retention, all of the things that our industry is really focused on helping to improve the effectiveness of learning. But then when we get to doing, there's motivation. How do you tap into a sense of motivation to actually apply what you've learned? Self-efficacy is about having the self-confidence to feel that you can act and apply this on your own. It requires trial and error and then not stopping there, unlearning old ways, having that mental energy to continue because trial and error is difficult and can be demotivating sometimes. And then the hardest part is who's holding you accountable and giving you feedback on a continuous basis. So the research shows that if you can continue this cycle, you will get to that state of being where that dotted line is. We refer to this as a phase transition, and the easiest way to describe this is those behaviors become harder to not do than to try to do. And at that point, what you need is constant self-reflection, and you start to transition then into being a mentor and teacher to others. So visualizing what this looks like is pretty amazing. The majority of the effort comes in the doing phase, and then it starts to trail off into being, where we say that that mental energy is then released. So what happens when we have a failure to transfer? What's very typical in our industry is that drop-off curve looks a little bit like this. We put energy into the learning phase, we attempt to drive that into doing, and then what happens over time is we can't sustain that, and we see that drop-off. But why is it so challenging? I know that everyone in this room, your intent is to move people to that lasting behavior change, and we've tried so many things. There's the cost, there's sustaining an individual's motivation. That's such a human challenge. We've all tried scalable tech, and in many cases we've seen really low engagement. Getting buy-in from our leaders, not only executive, but the learners themselves to sustain this process. And then in our industry, we just have such a hard time measuring once we get past the learning phase. So a quick snapshot of how we help our clients with this is making learning one-to-one, hyper-personalized, and fit it into the flow of work. So what we do is we blend some of the most effective learning interventions that are typically only available at the executive levels, and we make this scalable through science, through technology, and through tapping into other human capacities, like coaching. And then on the measurement side, the power of technology is we're able to capture pre and post behavioral outcomes and drive results like here at Workday, where they've seen significant increases in agility, which then you can see drives on the right side, includes, elevates, and drives, which are those outward behaviors. And we see this across all of the industries that we work with, from technology, financial services, even to utility companies of those workers who are going up and fixing the electrical boxes on the poles. So we'll end with this picture of the white water. You may be feeling it now, or it's coming. So I hope that what you've learned today is something that you can take with you back and apply into your organization to help build your future-ready workforce and help your people navigate those white waters. Thank you.